I know what it's like to carry wounds that never seem to heal completely. That feeling that something inside you is broken and may never be repaired. You smile when you meet other people, take part in conversations, carry on with your routine, but you carry an invisible weight that no one else can see or fully understand. It's as if there's a version of you that the world knows and another version, wounded and bruised, that you hide even from yourself at times. Many of us spend years trying to forget our deepest pains. We cover emotional scars with layers of distractions, overwork, or relationships that keep us busy enough not to feel. We create elaborate systems to circumvent certain memories, like someone who dodges a pothole on the pavement after tripping over it once. And so we go on living, dodging parts of ourselves, believing that we are protecting ourselves when, in fact, we are only fragmenting ourselves. I remember how I tried to run away from my own wounds for so long. I would wake up too early with that tight feeling in my chest that had no name or explanation. I would smile at meetings while inside something was screaming for attention. I filled every minute of my day so that I wouldn't have to face that silence where the voices of my pain could finally be heard. Perhaps you too know this dance, this exhausting choreography of avoiding what most needs to be seen. The curious thing is that nobody usually teaches us how to deal with our emotional wounds. From an early age, we learn that physical wounds need to be cared for, a cut needs to be cleaned, a bruise needs ice, a burn needs ointment. But what do we do with the first rejection that broke our hearts? The harsh words that molded our self-image? The abandonments that have defined how we trust others? For these wounds, we rarely receive instructions. Have you ever noticed how some pains seem to have a life of their own? How they emerge at exactly the moments you least expect them, during a joyful conversation, in the midst of a conquest, or in the silence of an ordinary evening. They appear like inconvenient visitors, unannounced, messing up everything you so carefully organized. And we usually try to shoo them away as quickly as possible, ashamed of their presence, as if they were unwelcome guests in our home. But what if I told you that your wounds aren't your enemies? That every pain you carry is not just a burden, but also a map? A folded and crumpled map, perhaps stained with tears and time, but a valuable map nonetheless. I have observed throughout my journey how often the greatest wounds we carry hold secrets about who we really are and where we need to go. Think of that relationship that ended and left a void that seemed impossible to fill. Or that criticism you received that still echoes in your mind when you try to take a risk. Maybe it's that loss that divided your life into before and after. Or that childhood that didn't give you what you needed to fully flourish. These wounds are not just sad stories to be forgotten. They are portals to understanding parts of you that are begging to be recovered. Have you noticed how certain patterns repeat themselves in your life? Maybe you always end up in relationships with people who aren't emotionally available, or you feel invisible in groups, even when you make an effort to express yourself. Maybe you abandon projects when they're about to work out, or constantly sacrifice yourself for others until there's nothing left for you. These patterns are not coincidences or character flaws, they are languages through which your wounds are trying to communicate with you. The world often tells us that we should get over our pain, move on, leave the past behind, as if our wounds were just obstacles in the way and not integral parts of the journey. I'm sorry to say, but this approach is like trying to navigate by discarding half the map just because that part shows difficult terrain. The truth is that we can't find our way by ignoring the very landmarks that could guide us. Your wounds contain precious information about your violated boundaries, unmet needs, and parts of you that have been left behind. When you felt betrayed, something in you knew the value of loyalty. When you felt invisible, something in you understood the importance of being truly seen. When you felt inadequate, something in you recognized your true value, even if only through the pain of your absence. Your wounds are evidence of what you value most and what is essential to your soul. The road home, to your true self, is rarely a straight line. It's more like following a winding river with rapids and backwaters, stretches where the water seems to disappear beneath the earth only to resurface further on. It's no coincidence that your wounds often seem to take you round in circles, revisiting emotional places you thought you'd left behind. What seems like repetition can actually be a spiral that takes you deeper and deeper into the center of who you are. So if you find yourself today carrying pain that seems too heavy, know that you are not alone on this journey. There is an ancient wisdom in this process of being hurt and finding healing, a knowledge that belongs to all of us, even when we feel lost. And perhaps the first step is not to try to get rid of your pain quickly, but to learn to listen to it with curiosity and compassion, like someone deciphering an important message that has traveled a long time to reach you. Observe how nature treats its own wounds. When lightning strikes a tree and opens a scar on its trunk, it doesn't try to hide the damage or pretend it didn't happen. The tree simply grows around the wound, incorporating it into its new form. That scar becomes part of its history, its structure, its unique beauty. The tree is no less a tree because of its mark. In fact, it often becomes more resilient, more distinctive, more truly itself because of what it has survived. Your emotional wounds work in a similar way, although our human tendency is to resist this integration. When we are hurt, our first reaction is to reject the experience, isolate it, push it away from our identity. That's not me, we say. That's just something terrible that happened to me. This separation seems to protect us temporarily, but it also creates an internal fragmentation that, over time, consumes more energy than it saves us. Think about how we react when we touch something hot. We instantly withdraw our hand, an automatic reflex to avoid further damage. Our emotional wounds create similar reflexes. We quickly move away from situations, people, or even parts of ourselves that we associate with past pain. This protection system is intelligent in its immediate purpose, but when it remains active for years or decades, it begins to limit our life instead of preserving it. There is profound wisdom in the saying, "The wound is the place where the light enters." When something breaks in us, an opening is created. And although this opening initially seems like just a painful rupture, over time it can turn into a passageway, a pathway to parts of ourselves and the world that we couldn't access before. People who have experienced great loss often report an expanded capacity for empathy, a more acute perception of the beauty in small things, a clarity about what really matters in life. Imagine a tapestry being woven. On the underside, which we rarely see, the threads look chaotic, knots, breaks, cut lines. It's disorganized and confusing. This underside represents how we experience our wounds when we're in the middle of them. But there is another side to the tapestry, the complete pattern that can only be appreciated from a distance, where every break and imperfection contributes to the beauty and integrity of the final design. Our lives also have these two levels of reading. Many ancient traditions understood that wounds are not accidents or punishments, but initiations. In cultures around the world, we find the same idea in different guises, that going through a specific type of suffering can open perceptive doors that would otherwise remain closed. The wounded shaman, the broken artist, the leader who has known despair, they all speak of a special knowledge that can only be acquired by going through, not around, difficult territory. Have you ever noticed how attracted we are to stories of transformation? In the tales we love most, the hero almost always goes through a period of intense trial, a dark night of the soul, before emerging with gifts he didn't previously possess. These narratives resonate so deeply because they reflect a truth we instinctively recognize, that our wounds, when fully inhabited, can lead us to a greater life, not a lesser one. Consider how a broken bone, when it heals properly, often becomes stronger at the site of the fracture than it was before. The repair process creates denser, more resistant bone tissue. Our emotional wounds have similar potential. When worked unconsciously, they can develop capacities in us that we would never have known if we remained comfortably unharmed. Our vulnerability, fully embraced, can become our most distinctive strength. The wounds we try hardest to hide often point to the gifts we have come to offer the world. A person who has grown up feeling invisible can develop an extraordinary ability to see others. Those who have experienced injustice can cultivate an unwavering commitment to fairness. Those who have known isolation often become community builders. There is a mysterious correspondence between our greatest pains and our most significant contributions. This principle even appears in geography. The most fertile valleys are often formed by traumatic ruptures in the earth, glaciers that tore up the ground, rivers that cut through mountains, volcanoes that exploded and then calmed down. The earth doesn't resist these violent transformations. It surrenders, and in this surrender, new forms of beauty and abundance become possible. Our interior follows laws similar to those that govern the natural world. Perhaps the most profound change in perspective is to move from seeing our wounds as flaws to recognizing them as passages. What hurt so much that you thought you wouldn't survive? Where was your life interrupted so abruptly that you temporarily lost all sense of who you were? These are not just traumatic episodes to be overcome, they are portals that, when crossed consciously, lead to dimensions of experience and understanding that were previously beyond your reach. There is an art to learning to read the language of your wounds. Like an archaeologist who delicately brushes away the earth to reveal a precious artifact, you can approach your deepest pains with attentive curiosity. What is buried there? What story is begging to be unearthed and honored? What treasure remains hidden under layers of protection and oblivion? Your wounds are full of clues about your particular journey back home, to the center of yourself. Start by noticing which wounds still speak loudly inside you. Those memories that make your body react even years later. The situations that trigger an emotional response out of proportion to the present moment. The recurring dreams that seem to convey a message you haven't yet managed to fully decipher. These are entry points, doors that your psyche keeps ajar because there is something important there that still needs your conscious attention. There is a crucial difference between revisiting a wound and reliving it. Reliving means being swallowed up again by the original experience, losing perspective on the present time and the wisdom you've developed since then. Revisiting, on the other hand, is approaching the painful memory with inner resources that you didn't have available at the time of the original event. It's looking back not as the helpless child, confused teenager, or overwhelmed adult you were, but as the more complete being you have become. Your deepest wounds often carry the seeds of your most significant gifts. A child who has developed an acute sensitivity to detecting the moods of the unstable adults around them can become an adult with an extraordinary ability to read environments and people. Those who have repeatedly faced rejection can develop an unwavering commitment to inclusion and belonging. Those who have known loss prematurely often cultivate a deep appreciation for the impermanence and preciousness of life. A transformative practice is to ask each wound, "What are you trying to protect me from feeling?" Because our psychological defenses, even the most rigid and seemingly problematic ones, began as acts of self-love. That tendency to isolate yourself before others reject you, to control situations to avoid powerlessness, to be suspicious so as not to be betrayed again, all these strategies were originally designed to keep you safe. Recognizing this is the first step towards developing new forms of protection that don't limit your life. Often what we fear most is not the pain itself, but being destroyed by it. There is a deep fear that if we really allow ourselves to feel the full extent of our hurt, anger, or grief, something fundamental in us will break permanently. But there is a liberating discovery waiting on the other side of this fear. The direct experience that you are bigger than your most intense emotions. That there is a part of you that can witness even the most overwhelming feelings without being consumed by them. One of the most powerful transformations occurs when we begin to perceive our wounds not just as personal stories, but as part of larger patterns that connect generations and entire communities. The abandonment you suffered can echo similar abandonments experienced by your parents or grandparents. The insecurity you carry may reflect cultural messages you've received since childhood. When we see our pain in this expanded context, something opens up, the possibility of healing not just for us, but for the larger system of which we are a part. Perhaps you've noticed how certain situations in life today seem strangely designed to touch on exactly your most sensitive vulnerabilities, as if the universe were deliberately putting its finger on the wounds you most want to avoid. There is an intelligence to this seemingly cruel process. Your unhealed wounds will continue to create circumstances that mirror the original pain until you finally turn towards them with the awareness and compassion that were absent at the initial moment of injury. A surprising discovery on the path to transforming wounds into wisdom is to realize that the part of you that has been wounded may not be the same part capable of healing the wound. The wounded inner child, for example, doesn't have the tools to fully process what has happened. It needs the presence and guidance of its adult self. This means that the healing process often involves a kind of inner time traveling, where more mature aspects of your consciousness come back to find and reassure the parts that got stuck in the past. There is a cathartic moment when you begin to recognize that your wound doesn't define who you are, it reveals who you are. The difference is profound. When a wound defines you, you become the story of your pain, limited by its contours. But when the wound reveals you, it becomes an entrance to deeper dimensions of your nature that have always been there, waiting to be discovered through the very process of suffering and healing. True transformation rarely happens through willpower or heroic determination. Instead, it occurs through a peculiar kind of surrender, not a passive or defeatist surrender, but a profound acceptance of what is. When we stop fighting the reality of our wounds, when we let go of the story of how our lives should have been different, an energy that was previously trapped in resistance becomes available for genuine growth and renewal. One of the most liberating changes is to move from seeing yourself as a victim to recognizing yourself as a protagonist in your own healing journey. This doesn't mean denying real injustices you've suffered or blaming yourself for what others have done. It means claiming your power in the present, recognizing that although you didn't choose your wounds, you can consciously choose how to relate to them now. This shift in perspective transforms the narrative of your life from something that happened to you to something that is happening through you. Perhaps the most profound paradox is this: your wounds are simultaneously personal and universal. They are uniquely yours, colored by the specific details of your life story, personality, and circumstances. And at the same time, they connect you to the shared human experience of vulnerability, loss, longing, and resilience. When you fully immerse yourself in the uniqueness of your pain, you often emerge into an ocean of compassion that transcends your individual story and connects you to the heart of humanity. Start by simply noticing where your body holds tension when certain memories or situations arise. Perhaps it's a tightness in your chest, a knot in your stomach, a stiffness in your shoulders, or a feeling of heaviness in your legs. Your physical body carries the history of your experiences and often knows the truth about your wounds before your conscious mind does. By learning to listen to these bodily sensations without immediately trying to change or push them away, you lay an essential foundation for any deeper work. Try creating a written dialogue with a specific wound you carry. Give it a voice of its own, allowing it to express itself without censorship or judgment. Ask her, "What do you need me to know? What are you trying to protect me from feeling? What do you need to feel really seen and heard?" Write down both the questions and the answers, allowing whatever comes up, even if it seems strange or surprising, to emerge. This simple process can reveal insights that your analytical mind alone would never reach. Often, what we need most is not an immediate solution to our pains, but a compassionate presence with them. Practice sitting quietly for a few minutes each day with any difficult emotion that arises, breathing consciously and offering yourself these simple words. This too is part of the human experience. Others have felt this before me. I can be with it without being defined by it. This practice of loving presence gradually dissolves the layer of judgment that often makes our wounds even more painful. Look closely at the relationship patterns in your life. Our unhealed wounds often express themselves through the people we attract and how we interact with them. Do you notice recurring themes, like always ending up looking after others while neglecting your own needs, or withdrawing when intimacy gets too intense? These patterns are valuable clues about your underlying wounds and the unconscious agreements you've made to protect yourself from them. A transformative practice is to identify the limiting belief that formed from a significant wound in your life. Perhaps a childhood abandonment created the belief that "I'm not enough." A betrayal may have installed the conviction that "I can't trust anyone." A public failure may have cemented the idea that it's dangerous to be seen. By naming this belief clearly, you begin to separate yourself from it, recognizing it as an interpretation that made sense at one point in your life, but which is not an absolute truth about who you are or how the world works. Try visualizing your wound as a young child or a wounded animal you meet on the road. How would you naturally approach this vulnerable being? Probably not with criticism, demands to get over it soon, or impatience. You would offer kindness, safe space, and careful attention. Start directing that same quality of compassionate presence towards your own wounded parts, especially those you've tried hardest to hide or overcome through sheer force of will. Look for moments in your life story when you demonstrated resilience in the face of adversity. Even in the most painful experiences, there have often been ways, sometimes small and almost imperceptible, in which you have resisted, maintained your dignity, found beauty, or helped others despite your own pain. To acknowledge these moments is not to deny suffering, but to honor the full complexity of your experience and the strength that was always there, even when you felt at your most fragile. A powerful practice is to find or create a personal ritual to honor a significant wound in your life. This can be as simple as lighting a candle on an important date, writing a letter you won't send, or visiting a place that symbolizes your journey. Rituals offer a framework for processing emotions that may be too big for our everyday minds to encompass. They recognize the importance of what you have experienced and mark your intention to integrate this experience into your ongoing story with awareness and respect. Practice replacing the question, "Why did this happen to me?" with "What can I do with what happened?" The first question often keeps us trapped in a cycle of victimization and fruitless searches for a logic that we may never find. The second question refocuses us on our present power and the possibilities that remain open, regardless of what we have lost or suffered. This simple change of perspective can transform a wound from an endpoint into a starting point. Try sharing a part of your story of hurt and healing with someone you trust, or in an appropriate context such as a support group. There is something deeply transformative about having our experience witnessed by others without judgment or attempts to fix it. When our wounds are received with compassion by another person, something is deconstructed in the belief that we need to hide them or overcome them alone. What's more, your authentic story may be exactly what someone else needs to hear in order to feel less alone on their own journey. Start noticing how you talk to yourself about your wounds and struggles. The language we use internally profoundly shapes our experience. There's a big difference between thinking "I'm broken" and "I'm going through a healing process," between "I fail at everything I try" and "I'm still learning and growing." Practice self-communication that honors both the reality of your pain and the truth of your innate capacity for transformation and renewal. Take a regular moment to reflect on how your wounds have, in unexpected ways, enriched your life. What qualities have they developed in you? Perhaps greater empathy, resilience, authenticity, or appreciation for what really matters. What meaningful choices have you made as a direct result of your difficult experiences? Who have you met, or what have you learned that wouldn't have been possible without that particular part of your journey? This is not an exercise in denying pain, but in recognizing your remarkable ability to extract meaning from even the most challenging experiences. The path of transforming wounds into wisdom is neither linear nor does it have a defined endpoint. It's more like a spiral where you revisit familiar territories from your personal history, but each time from a slightly different place, with new resources and perspectives. There will be days when you feel like you've gone back to the beginning, as if no progress has been made. In those moments, remember, return is not regression when it brings with it an expanded consciousness. You never return to exactly the same place even when the landscape seems familiar. Truly integrating your wounds doesn't mean that you'll never feel pain related to them again. It means that pain no longer needs to be the organizing center of your identity or your choices. Like the scar from a major operation, it may occasionally bother you in certain climates or when pressed in a certain way, but it no longer dominates your consciousness or limits your movements as it did during the acute recovery process. The wound exists within you, not you within the wound. There is a special grace in realizing that we are never truly healed alone. Our personal wounds are intertwined with collective, family, cultural, and even historical wounds. Likewise, our healing doesn't happen in isolation. Every step you take to transform your pain into deeper understanding creates ripples that extend far beyond your individual experience. Your willingness to honestly face what hurts inside you contributes in invisible but powerful ways to the healing of a much larger field that we share. As you continue on this journey, you may find that your deepest wounds gradually turn into surprisingly reliable sources of guidance. What has hurt you most develops a refined sensitivity, an inner compass that recognizes both suffering and authenticity in others and in the world around you. You may realize that you trust the insights that emerge from your broken places more than the logic that comes only from the intellect. This is no coincidence, it's part of the gift hidden within the wound itself. Our ancestors in many cultures understood that the wounded person who finds their way back to wholeness brings a special kind of medicine to the community. It's not immaculate perfection, but the imperfect beauty of breaking down and putting things back together that offers tangible hope and direction for others. Her scars, born with dignity and self-knowledge, become maps that others can recognize when they are lost in their own inner wilderness. Her story of return from exile becomes a beacon, Perhaps the most profound transformation is not just healing the wound, but honoring what it has taught you so much that you wouldn't want a life without it. Not out of masochism or idealization of suffering, but because you recognize how that particular experience has sculpted your soul in ways that no ongoing comfort could have done. This is a paradox that can only be understood by living it, that some of the most difficult parts of your story become, with time and awareness, some of the most precious. There's an old phrase that says, "The wound is the place where the light enters you." But perhaps it's even truer to say that the wound reveals a light that has always been there, waiting to be discovered. Your painful experiences don't create your essence. They tear away the veils that hide who you've always been, beneath all the layers of conditioning, expectations, and protections you've built up. In this sense, the journey back home through your wounds is not so much a journey of acquisition as of revelation. Many spiritual traditions speak of luminous darkness, a paradoxical state where pain and clarity coexist, where loss and expansion happen simultaneously. This special quality of consciousness does not deny the reality of suffering, but contains it within a wider field of understanding and acceptance. As you learn to inhabit your wounds with presence and compassion, you can discover this subtle luminosity that doesn't depend on external circumstances being perfect or even pleasant. It's a light that shines not despite the darkness, but through it. Throughout this journey with your wounds, you can gradually realize that the final destination is not a perfect state of complete healing, but an expanded capacity to embrace life in its entirety. To remain open to beauty and pain, connection and separation, birth and death, not as opposites to be reconciled, but as movements in the same dance that is life itself. This spaciousness of being, this willingness not to contract in the face of any human experience, is perhaps the most valuable treasure hidden within your wounds. Over time, you may notice a softening of the boundary between wound and wholeness, between broken and whole. What once seemed like a clear division begins to reveal itself as a continuous spectrum of human experience, where vulnerability and strength are not opposites, but complementary aspects of the same fundamental vitality. This realization comes not as an intellectual concept, but as a lived experience, a bodily recognition that we have always been and continue to be, even in our most fragmented moments, fundamentally whole. There is a special beauty in a life that has fully integrated its wounds, not as identities to be carried or stories to be repeated, but as vehicles of profound transformation. It's the beauty of kintsugi, the Japanese art of repairing broken pottery with gold, creating something more valuable and unique precisely because of its history of breakage and restoration. Your life, with all its cracks and repairs, its losses and discoveries, is a work of art in progress, all the more extraordinary because of everything you've been through. The truth is that we never completely reach the end of this journey. As long as we live, we will continue to find new wounds and revisit old ones with deeper understandings. But there comes a time when we realize that we are no longer so scared of our own pain, that we learn to trust the process, to recognize the wisdom that lies within our most difficult experiences. And perhaps this is the greatest transformation of all, not the absence of suffering, but the presence of an unshakable confidence in your ability to transform any experience, no matter how painful, into a path back home, to the center of who you really are. And so, dear traveler, you continue. One step at a time, one moment at a time, one breath at a time. Sometimes moving forward, sometimes resting, sometimes seemingly moving backwards, but always on the move, always evolving, always on the journey. Your wounds are your maps. Your struggles are your teachers. Your broken heart is your gateway to a capacity to love that you didn't even know was possible. And although I can't promise that the path will be easy, I can assure you, with the certainty of someone who has seen many souls make this same crossing before you, there is enough light within you to illuminate even the darkest parts of your journey home.